Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really tackling something huge, I think. A fundamental question, maybe the fundamental question for understanding America.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
What was it all for? You know? What was the purpose, the goal, the telos, that Greek word that guided the founders when they set up this whole new political thing?
Yeah, and it's not just, some historical footnote.
Right.
Understanding that telos, that purpose, is actually super relevant right now. It helps you look at, all the different political ideas floating around today, progressive libertarian, post-liberal, woke leftist, whatever, and ask, okay, how does this square with the original idea? Does it line up? Or is it going somewhere else entirely?
Exactly. It gives you a baseline, sort of. So that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to dig into the material, the philosophy, the history, and really try to grasp the intellectual foundations here. What was the point? We want to bring some clarity, maybe find some surprising connections for you listening.
It's definitely a journey worth taking.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. This word, telos, what are we actually talking about?
Right, so it's Greek, and it means basically purpose or goal or end.
The damned goal.
Yeah, the ultimate reason something exists, like its inherent aim. Why is it here? What's it designed to do or be?
So, like, the telos of a knife is to cut.
Exactly. Or an acorn, its telos is to become an oak tree. It's that built-in purpose.
Got it. So it's not just what it does, but what it's for.
Precisely. And this idea goes way back, especially to Aristotle. He argued, famously, that everything in nature has a telos. It's striving towards something.
Everything. Even us.
Especially us. For Aristotle, the human telos was, it was about living a flourishing life. Eudaimonia, he called it.
Flourishing, like being happy.
More than just happy. It's about living virtuously, using our reason, fulfilling our potential as human beings, within a community. It's about excellence, really. Living well as rational, social creatures.
Okay, living virtuously, rationally, in community.
Yeah.
That's the human goal, according to Aristotle.
That's the classical view, yeah. It sets a kind of philosophical backdrop.
So when we bring that to America, asking, what was the telos of America? We're asking
about its intended purpose. What kind of human life was this whole structure, the government, the Constitution, the society designed to support? What was the ultimate aim for the people living within it?
Right. What was the nation for? Not just how was it set up, but why?
Exactly.
Okay. So to answer that, we need to get inside the founders' heads a bit. What were they reading? What ideas shapes their thinking?
Well, a huge influence was Scottish moral philosophy people like Hutcheson, Hume, Adam Smith, and also the long tradition of natural law thinking.
Natural law. The idea that there are moral truths built into the universe that we can figure out through reason.
That's a big part of it. And these ideas led them to a really core conviction that human beings have inherent dignity, that we possess reason and, crucially, a moral capacity. This wasn't just a nice thought. They saw it as, almost self-evident, part of how things are.
So people are fundamentally good, or at least capable of good.
Capable, definitely. But they weren't starry-eyed idealists either. They knew people weren't perfect. Far from it.
Right. Checks and balances exist for a reason.
Absolutely. They understood human failings, selfishness, ambition, all that. But, and this is key, they believed people were capable of virtue, and importantly, capable of self-government.
But it wasn't automatic.
No, not at all. That capacity needed the right conditions. It needed order, it needed the rule of law, it definitely needed education, not just reading and writing, but moral education. And it needed community, strong families, churches, local associations, all that stuff they called civil society.
So you need this whole ecosystem to support people being able to govern themselves well.
Precisely. Without that foundation, they feared the whole experiment in self-government wouldn't last. You couldn't just declare freedom. You had to build the conditions for responsible freedom.
Which leads to their view of government itself. If people are capable but need support, what's the government's job?
Well, first and foremost, government wasn't the main event. It wasn't the source of meaning or the ultimate goal.
It wasn't the end, but the means.
Exactly. It was seen as a tool, a necessary one, but a tool nonetheless. Its purpose: to cultivate virtue, liberty, and the common good.
Yeah.
Its job was to establish and protect the conditions where people, families, communities could flourish morally and materially.
So government creates the space, protects the space, but doesn't fill the space.
That's a great way to put it. It provides the framework, the security, the justice system, so that individuals and groups can pursue the good life as they understand it. It wasn't meant to dictate that life.
Okay. So Government serves human flourishing, but it doesn't define it.
Right. And actually, before we dig deeper into the nation's purpose, we really need to understand what they thought the individual's purpose was, because that's foundational.
The individual's telos comes first.
In their thinking, yes. The purpose of the nation flows from the purpose of the individuals who make it up. The founding documents, the philosophy behind them, it all emphasizes the individual's role and duty.
Okay, so what is that individual purpose, according to this classic American liberalism, drawing on natural law?
It's basically that each person has a moral duty, an inherent purpose. And that is to cultivate virtue, exercise reason, and live in accordance with conscience.
Let's unpack that. Cultivate virtue. Like, work on being a good person. Honesty, courage, that sort of thing.
Exactly. Actively developing good character traits. And exercising reason isn't just about being smart. It's about using your reason to make moral choices, to figure out right from wrong in practical situations.
And living by conscience. Following your inner moral compass.
Right. It implies this internal process of self-governance. You're responsible for your own moral development. It's an active job, not something passive.
It sounds like a lot of responsibility on the individual.
It is, and it's really important to get this right because it's often misunderstood today. This individual telos is not mere self-interest or freedom from constraint.
So it's not just I could do whatever I want.
Definitely not. That's license, not liberty as they understood it. The goal is self-mastery and the pursuit of the good life.
Self-mastery, controlling your impulses.
Yes, directing yourself towards what's truly good, using reason. And that good life isn't just about personal gain. It inherently includes higher values, truth, justice, caring about the community.
Yeah.
True freedom, in this view, is the freedom to do good, to fulfill your moral potential.
Okay, so if that's the purpose, what duties come with it?
Several key ones. First, the duty to actually develop moral character. You have to work at it.
Makes sense.
Second, the duty to honor the rights of others. Your freedom ends where someone else's begins, essentially. You have to respect their dignity and rights just as you expect yours to be respected.
Reciprocity.
Exactly. And third, a duty to participate in self-government through informed and virtuous citizenship. You can't just sit back. You have to engage, understand the issues, contribute responsibly to the public good.
So being a citizen is an active moral role.
Very much so. And the founders were absolutely convinced that the whole republic depended on citizens taking these duties seriously.
It couldn't just be forced by laws.
No. Laws are necessary, they set boundaries, punish bad behavior, but they can't make people virtuous. They believed the republic's survival depended on an internal moral commitment within the citizenry. People had to want to be good citizens, guided by conscience, for the system to work.
Wow. So the whole thing rests on individual character, ultimately.
To a huge extent, yes. That was the gamble.
So wrapping up the individual's role, it's not about license, but responsible freedom, rightly ordered to virtue and the common good.
That sums it up perfectly. Freedom for something, not just freedom from something.
Okay. Now, if that's the individual's purpose, how does the state fit in? What's its telos?
Right, billing directly on that. The state's purpose is derived from the individual's purpose.
So its job is?
Fundamentally, it exists to secure the conditions necessary for individuals and communities to fulfill their moral duties and live virtuously. It's the protector of the space where people can pursue their own telos.
So it enables but doesn't dictate.
Precisely. And this leads to that crucial distinction. The state is a minister of justice, not the source of meaning.
Minister of Justice. So its job is to ensure fairness and protect rights.
Yes. Its authority comes from the need to uphold justice and protect those pre-existing rights. It doesn't invent morality. It serves a moral order that exists independent of it. Its power is limited and accountable to that higher order.
Which is a pretty radical idea compared to, say, absolute monarchies where the king was the source of law.
Absolutely revolutionary. And this defines its specific functions.
Okay, like what?
Well, number one, protecting natural rights, life, liberty, property, the pursuit of happiness. These are seen as inherent, not granted by the government.
Got it. What else?
Administering law fairly and impartially, making sure the rules apply equally to everyone, also preserving order because you can't have liberty and chaos.
Right, basic security.
Yeah. And something often forgotten, supporting civil society. This means respecting and protecting the autonomy of families, churches, schools, charities, local groups, all those non-governmental institutions where people live out their lives and cultivate virtue.
So the government shouldn't try to take over those rules.
Exactly. It supports them by protecting their freedom to operate. And crucially, all these functions have limits. The state must operate within the limits of reason, consent, and the moral law. It's not above the law, especially not the moral law.
So the state recognizes the moral order, it doesn't create it.
Yes. That's central to limited government. The government is limited not just to be efficient, but because the most important things in life, the highest ends of man, are simply beyond the reach of politics.
Government can't make you virtuous or wise or find meaning.
Right. It can't legislate faith or command love or force genuine flourishing. Those happen in the spheres of individual conscience, family, community, faith, not through state coercion.
It's like building the road, but not telling people where to drive or why the journey matters.
That's a good analogy. Which leads to how they viewed the state's nature. It's not a god to be worshipped. It's nor a machine to be run purely for efficiency without morals. And it's nor a manager micromanaging everyone's lives.
So what is it?
It's understood as a servant of a higher moral reality. It's answerable to natural law, to the people's conscience, and its whole purpose is to secure the liberty of those people. It's a servant, not a master.
A powerful but limited servant.
Exactly. And James Madison put it so clearly, justice is the end of government. It is the end of civil society.
Justice. Not power, not progress, not utopia, but justice.
That was the ultimate political goal, securing justice so that people could pursue their own higher goals.
Okay, this framework is really coming together. Now, how does the Constitution fit into this picture of Telos? So it's usually seen as just, a legal rule book.
Right, but if you look at it through this lens informed by the founder's philosophy, it's much more. It's fundamentally a moral charter.
A moral charter.
Right.
How so?
Well, think about how it enshrines natural rights. Life, liberty, property, the pursuit of happiness. These are treated as pre-political truths.
Meaning they exist before government.
Exactly. The Constitution doesn't grant these rights. It recognizes and protects rights that people already possess simply by virtue of being human. That's a deeply moral statement about where rights come from, not from the state, but from something higher nature or God, depending on the founder.
So the government's job is to secure them, not invent them.
Precisely. And the way it structures government is also deeply tied to this moral vision. It's designed to balance liberty and order.
The checks and balances, separation of powers.
All of that. It's trying to prevent tyranny, which destroys liberty, but also prevent anarchy, which also destroys liberty by eliminating order. It's setting up self-government, but a specific kind.
What kind?
Self-government based on consent, laws, and virtue.
Right.
It assumes the people can rule themselves, but only if they do so responsibly within a legal framework and, crucially, with a degree of shared virtue.
It relies on the people being capable of using their freedom well.
Absolutely. Figures like Madison or John Witherspoon, who taught many founders at Princeton, they saw the Constitution as the structure needed to secure a republican form of government where citizens are morally equipped to govern themselves.
Morally equipped. That keeps coming back. The structure isn't enough on its own.
No. The Constitution is the framework, but the character of the people is the engine that makes it run properly. Without that moral equipment, the best design system will eventually fail, they believed.
Okay. So we've looked at the individual, the state, the Constitution. Let's bring it all together. The big question. What was America for? What are its core telic purposes based on this whole philosophy?
Right, the payoff question. What emerges from all this?
Well, the first one seems unavoidable. Ordered liberty.
Yes, not just liberty as chaos, but freedom structured by law, aimed at allowing people to pursue a good, virtuous life.
Freedom to be good, not just freedom from interference. Like that orchestra analogy, playing together under rules creates something better than noise.
Exactly. Liberty ordered towards human flourishing, protected by law and respecting rights.
Okay, what's next?
A second purpose, and this one is often controversial today, is the preservation of a moral and religious people.
Ah, the John Adams quote.
That's the one. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other.
What did he mean by that? An official state church?
Not necessarily establishing one specific church, though practices varied early on, but it was a recognition, a strong belief, that Republican self-government depended on a certain shared moral framework, that virtues like honesty, self-restraint, civic duty, often nurtured by religious belief and practice common at the time, were essential. Without that internal moral compass in the people, the external controls of the Constitution wouldn't be enough.
So morality, often linked to religion, was seen as vital for the system to function.
Absolutely vital, a necessary precondition in their view.
Okay, third purpose.
Third, the cultivation of self-government rooted in natural law and moral virtue.
Which is different from just majority rule.
Very different. They were wary of pure democracy becoming mob rule. This is about citizens governing themselves responsibly, understanding their duties under natural law, guided by virtue, not just by popular whim or self-interest. It's about a quality of self-government, not just the procedure.
It requires informed, virtuous citizens actively participating.
Yes. A morally informed citizenry.
And the fourth purpose.
Fourth, underpinning the others. The flourishing of civil society.
Those little platoons. Families, churches, local groups.
Exactly. The vision was that these institutions, largely independent of the state, are where character is really formed, where virtue is practiced daily, where people learn cooperation and mutual support. They saw these as the bedrock of the community, essential for teaching the habits needed for self-government and providing the social fabric. The state protects them, but they do the crucial work of building citizens.
So, ordered liberty, a moral people, virtuous self-government, and a flourishing civil society. That's the package deal, the telos.
That seems to be the core vision emerging from the material, yes.
Now, understanding that original vision, it really highlights how different some modern ideas are, doesn't it?
It certainly throws them into sharp relief. And the goal here isn't to bash any ideology, but just to understand the contrasts, to see where the purposes align or diverge.
Right, just mapping the landscape. So how does progressivism look against that backdrop?
Well, progressivism, particularly later forms, often sees the state quite differently. There's a tendency to view it as a tool for social engineering and economic redistribution.
More active, more directive than the founder's Minister of Justice.
Generally, yes. The focus shifts towards using state power to achieve specific collective outcomes, often centered on equality of outcome or social justice defined in terms of group disparities, which can be a different emphasis than protecting individual natural rights as the primary goal.
Okay. What about post-liberalism? That's a newer term for many.
Right. Post-liberalism often emphasizes tradition and authority, trying to restore a sense of shared moral order and community, which resonates with some of the founders' concerns about virtue.
But there's a potential downside.
The potential concern, from the perspective of the original Telos, is that it might collapse the individual into the collective. Sometimes the emphasis on community good or traditional authority might risk sidelining individual liberty, freedom of conscience, or natural rights in a way. The founders, with their focus on inherent individual dignity, would have likely resisted.
Okay. Then libertarianism. It champions liberty, like the founders.
It certainly does, but it often tends to define the telos primarily, sometimes almost exclusively, as radical autonomy and non-aggression.
So the focus is mainly on freedom from coercion.
Largely, yes, which is crucial. But sometimes there's less emphasis on the positive content of liberty, the ordered liberty aimed at the good life part. There might not be as explicit a framework for shared moral obligations or the necessity of virtue beyond respecting non-aggression. The founders saw virtue as a prerequisite for liberty, not just a possible outcome.
Interesting distinction. And finally, woke leftism.
From the perspective we're examining, this approach tends to reject any fixed telos altogether.
Meaning no inherent human purpose or universal moral law.
Often, yes. The focus tends to shift towards identity and power for virtue and law. Society is often analyzed primarily through lenses of group identity, oppression, and power struggles. Concepts like objective truth or a common good discoverable by reason might be questioned or replaced by perspectives rooted in lived experience and group identity. Purpose becomes more fluid, defined by ongoing social and political struggle, rather than a fixed moral order.
So a very different starting point from the natural law framework.
Fundamentally different, yes. Again, the point here is just to understand these varying approaches to purpose, using the founder's vision as a sort of reference point for comparison.
Yeah.
It helps clarify what's at stake in these different worldviews.
Absolutely. Understanding that original telos really does matter, doesn't it? It's not just history.
It matters immensely. It can help us, as you said, recover what made it not only unique, but good. It gives us a standard, a way to evaluate where we are and where we might be going. It reconnects us to the deeper philosophical aspirations of the American project.
And it constantly circles back to that crucial idea. Liberty is not license, but ordered freedom aimed at the good life. Freedom has a purpose, a direction.
Exactly. It's freedom for virtue, freedom for flourishing within a framework of law and mutual respect.
And it highlights that twin responsibility.
Yes, that the individual has a moral destiny, a duty to pursue virtue and self-mastery, and the state has a moral responsibility to protect, not define that destiny.
The state protects the path, but doesn't choose the destination for you.
Beautifully put. It safeguards the freedom for individuals and communities to seek the good, the true, and the meaningful on their own terms, guided by conscience.
Which ultimately means, well, it means a free society is fragile.
It is, and it leads to that final, powerful point. A free society cannot survive without virtue, truth, and shared moral commitments.
They're not optional. They're the foundation.
They are the bedrock. Without citizens committed to seeking truth, acting virtuously, and upholding basic moral norms, the structures of liberty, no matter how well designed, will eventually crumble. The telos gets lost.
Wow. We covered a lot of ground there. From Aristotle to Adams, from individual duty to the purpose of the state, really trying to pin down that original American telos. Understanding it really does give you a different lens, doesn't it?
It really does. It changes how you see things.
So as you listening are thinking about all this, maybe consider.
Yeah, here's a thought to take away. How does understanding this original purpose, this telos, actually change how you think about the debates happening right now? How does it inform your role, your responsibilities as a citizen in this ongoing experiment of a free society?
That's definitely something to chew on. A great place to leave it for this deep dive. Thanks for exploring the telos of America with us. Until next time, keep thinking, keep questioning.